Okay, so welcome to the first episode of the series She Who Initiates. And today I am here with Rosie Enorah Heart. And Rosie Enorah Heart is a sex worker. And Rosie, as I was going to your Instagram page, I really loved the description that you put up there for yourself. And what it said was you are a sex worker of the year 2017 and it chronicles her adventures through the magical realms of conscious kink, queer sexuality, and sex positivity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's me.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful, beautiful title that you have.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, and Rosie, we met last year, November,
Yeah.
in the Magdalene Priestess training from Winterjade Isley that you were organizing for her. And I remember that, well, first of all, welcome. I feel really excited that you're here. Yeah, but I remember that one of the transmissions in this training was the transmission from you in the archetype of the whore.
Mm.
And like something so beautiful shifted and opened in me that day, that since then you activated an exploration in me around the archetype of the whore. And
Mm.
so when I wanted to create this series of She Who Initiates, there's this deep curiosity around me to connect with women around the archetype of the whore and how that exploration and journey went from them. And you were the first one that popped into my mind.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I feel really curious if you just want to share something about yourself and the journey that led you into this work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, where to start? Like around 6 years ago, I graduated from university, and it was like still the how to say, like the last bits of the economic crisis, and even though I had really quite a good CV, there was no interesting work at all. So I did a few of those unpaid internships, and it was just very demotivating. And obviously, I needed money to pay my rent. Um, and a friend of mine was actually already doing sex work, like very different from what I ended up doing. But because of that, it was already in my mind and in my consciousness, like that is something you can do. And I was already in the queer community and in the more sex positive and kinky community. So um, like sex and sexuality and exploring was already very much a part of my life. And then I just started to look into like what kinds of sex work are there, and is there any type that I would like to do. And then I found like a really nice escort agency actually that was and is totally run by women. It's all very like elegant and beautiful. It's one of those high class ones, whatever that means. So I called them and I was like, okay, let's have a conversation. Maybe we like each other, and we did. So I started working there, and like when I started, I thought this is going to be just fun for like a year or so. It will just give me some space to breathe and not worry about money, have something fun to do, go on like exciting dates with all kinds of people. And then I can just take a year to think like, do I want to do a PhD, or what do I want to do with my life? But then the first session came, and I was super nervous, obviously. Um, and there was just so much depth to that session, that I was just blown away by the intimacy and the connection and the emotional stuff involved. Um, and at first I was like, okay, but that's the first session. I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence. But then session after session had that depth, and I was like, okay, this is more than I thought it would be. It's more interesting, um, and that's when I started to do courses in tantra and in space holding and counseling and all that. because I had these crying people in my arms, like almost every session, and I thought, it's probably a good idea to actually know what I'm doing when I'm guiding them through these emotional journeys. So I started doing these courses, and after roughly 2 years or so, I started my own business, um, where that emotional journey and the personal growth is the angle that I focus on. Where with the escort agency, it's like a girlfriend experience, as they say, um, and so that's the premise people come in on, and then the emotional stuff and the actual journey stuff and the initiation stuff is what sort of um, comes in unexpectedly, so to say. um, and with my own journey, I start with the juicy bits already, and people come to me with questions around their sexuality and issues that they have, everything from premature ejaculation to I've had this fantasy for 50 years and I really want to share it with someone and maybe even play it out, to trans people who have a difficult relationship with their body and want to find pleasure in that body. So it's become much more varied over the years. But that's like the sort of short version of the of the story.
And I
Yeah,
think I love how you share that you were like nervous on the first session, and then once you went into it, you were like amazed by the depth of it.
yeah,
And I feel like I think that there are quite a lot of people who have a kind of image of a sex worker, of the whore as an archetype, that it has something like wrong or simple or shallow to it. So I feel like this is such an important transmission to share, like to share the depth also of this work and of this archetype with the world. And I feel that's what touched me also so much in your transmission last year in
yeah.
retreat.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is one of depth, certainly, and that's what's like kept me in this business.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's not what makes like this work good or not wrong. Lots of colleagues don't experience that depth, but give this amazing experience of pleasure to their clients that's not super deep. Um, but that still doesn't mean that that work is wrong in any way. Like for me, the depth is not, well, for me personally, it's important because that's what I like.
Yeah.
But it's not important in terms of um, some kind of moral judgment around his work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. So you're
Mm.
saying there's all kinds of flavors in the sex work, and
Yeah.
one is more focused on one, and one is more focused on the other, and very personally also.
Yeah.
As you named it, the depth is personally to you really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I've been feeling really inspired also by the priestesses in ancient times, and I've
Mm.
read a lot about how they would also work through their sexual energy
Yeah.
with men or women in an initiation space.
Yeah.
And so I feel also curious if you feel a connection to that same realm of the priestesses that would work in this way in ancient times.
Yeah. I mean, I've maybe a little bit less now, but certainly in previous years, I've worked a lot with a goddess called Babylon, um, who is described as like the whore of whores, um, and like that feeling of like in a not like an official way, but sort of being her priestess, has certainly been part of my path. Um, and now it's become a bit more personal or nuanced, maybe. So I don't really attach that feeling that I will go into a little bit later, to like a certain god or goddess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but still, that feeling is there. And when I say that feeling, I mean like once I go into a session, it feels like something is moving through me. and that I'm not really doing the work. I'm just sort of letting whatever needs to flow through.
Yeah.
And actually, the other day, I was talking to a pastor for a Dutch television show, and I was describing that, and he was like, "Yeah, that's what I would call God." And we were like, "Okay, that's yeah, okay. If you want to call that God, that's fine. I just call it flow or whatever." Um, but that's
Pastor. I just noticed I was like a pastor. Like I noticed my awareness stays with that.
yeah,
I feel like I was just looking in the background, you see like Mother Mary, and like also looking at like Mary Magdalene, and
yeah,
then Mother Mary, and the separation that the church makes between the mother and the whore. So I
yeah,
just noticed the like surprising when I said the other day I was sharing about this with a pastor.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it was it's a Dutch television show on the Evangelische Omroep. And the premise of the show is to put people together in conversation that like on the outside seem very far removed from each other, seem to be opposites.
Yeah.
But then often it turns out, well, we're all just people and la la la. So it was really interesting to do that. And the person that I was paired up with was really nice and really open, and we actually had a lot in common. But
Amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But before we go a bit deeper into that, I feel curious when you named the goddess Babylon, who is the whore of whores.
Yeah.
If you can share a little bit more about your experience in the times that you were working with the archetype of the
Yeah.
whore of whores. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's not so much that I don't work with it anymore. It's more that I don't really attach names to it so
Mhm.
much. Um, so when I like used to go into sessions, I would sort of call on Babylon to hold me, like and flow through me. And I still do that, but it's just not connected to that specific deity anymore. It's more
Mm.
intuitive, I guess. I don't know. It just sort of shifted from um, like like a very clear picture of one goddess to maybe more to the archetype.
Mhm.
And that archetype can take so many forms. Um, that yeah, I think that would be a good description. Yeah, so it's diversified in a way. Um, but I still, when I go into a session or when I start a session day, I will make my altar nice and put a candle and just take some time to ground and start to feel that flow. Um, and like most importantly, this archetype work um, really helps me to just trust in the process,
Mm.
um, and the thought of or the realization that it's not actually me doing the work, it's this flow, it's this intuition or goddess or whatever you want to call it. um, that's that Yeah, that really helps to not be too nervous because it's going to be fine. um, and when I get a ingeving, how do you say this in English?
Like an insight or an impulse.
Yeah, when there's something that feels right, um, I tend to trust that
Mm.
and go with that. Um, so in a way, it's still very much part of my work. It's just less specific.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful. So I feel curious as you share this also in the process of my own deepening into my whore. What
mm,
I'm noticing is that I bumped into distrust towards these energies in me.
right.
So I feel curious because I feel that you moved. It sounds like quite immediate from a space of trust in the whore energy in you. So I feel curious there. Like, did you
Mm.
have a journey there with trusting deeper the whore inside of you?
Um, that's a good question.
I'm also asking it for the ones who are listening and they are
Yeah,
in the exploration with their whore and bump into to moments where you don't trust this quality. Also because when I look back in my history, I've been in like toxic relationships in my teenage years, and I would also sometimes suppress that whore energy, and then it would come out in a shadow toxic way, and
Yeah.
it would come out manipulative or in the shadow of the whore. And so I feel because of that I entered into that journey where I needed to, yeah, find trust again in those energies in me. So
Yeah.
there's curiosity in me how you, yeah, how that has been for you, that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like obviously that's been a journey as well. Like at first when I started this work, it was immediate. Like I went into that session without knowing that this magic stuff was going to happen, and it was just okay. There was no other choice than to just surrender to it. um, and like I also went through a phase where when I actually was in an unsafe relationship, um, where there would be different voices in my head, and when I started to think about it, I didn't know which one was like the actual intuition anymore. It was like, huh? um,
Mm.
but for me the key to that was actually the realization that that happened when I got into my head. And there was a really strong sense of, yeah, but you know which one is the right one.
Mm.
um, Cut the crap, like you know. um, and for me, like coming more into my body has really helped with that. Like for me my intuition really lives in my tummy and sometimes up to my heart, like this line. um, and yeah, the hard parts around trust and around surrender have been like when I got into my head and started to think my way out of it. But when I allowed myself to yeah, to sink into my body, I always knew like what was what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does
Beautiful.
that answer your question?
Yeah, and it actually also really resonates when I look back at my when I'm looking back at my own process. It's really trusting my body and how that energy wants to move through my body and
Yeah.
follow that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
really,
when it's right, you just know it. And when you're sort of pretending that it is your intuition and you're riding it, you also know it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think what happens then, like the next thing that I feel we can bump into, or at least that is true for me, is that then the energy moves in certain directions, and the experience with my whore is that it can bump into directions that it can also be quite scary. Like, oh my God, is this gonna be weird? Is this still okay? Like,
Mm.
is this like crossing any boundaries of, um, for example, in my relationship? There is, because I feel the horror has this quality of uh, also going into the secret and the
Yeah.
forbidden and hidden.
Yeah.
And so it's also a quite shaky ground sometimes for
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the archetype is very chaotic in a way, and it doesn't really care about you or the other people. So
Exactly.
um, there's a that's where like our own responsibility comes in, I think, and to stay grounded in ourselves and what we know to be true,
Yeah.
and a very strong practice around consent.
Mm.
Um, so like even when you are really in that archetype, um, I think it's important to be able to sort of step out step out of it for a moment,
Yeah.
and have a little meta conversation with yourself or with whoever you're connecting with, and go like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm noticing that it's going this direction. Is that okay with you? Is that something you want to explore with me?
Yes.
And then if it's a no, that's going to be hard for the archetype to accept, but she's going to have to. um,
Yeah.
so it's like that balance,
Yeah.
and really like strong skills in consent are very important in that. Like also with yourself, because the archetype might be ready for you to explore everything, but maybe you're not.
Mm.
Maybe you need to slow down a little bit. Um,
Mm.
so
Oh,
also just because it's an archetype, it doesn't mean it knows better than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you bring that in. And here for me comes also like I love working with both the mother and the whore,
Mm.
because I feel the mother holds a quality also then to zoom out and to have like the overview and the care and the like the softness in which I can then hold myself
Yeah.
to see, yeah, to see where I am actually at, and not
Yeah.
energy that wants to move through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me they're super connected as well. Like sometimes it's impossible to distinguish which is which.
Exactly,
And
'cause that's where I wanted to go now. I feel like we're going
perfect.
into the chaos of the whore, and you said like she's about like her as an archetype is about me, and not caring about anyone else.
Mm.
Like, can you share some other qualities that you've experienced in the whore as the whore archetype before we go to the mother?
Yeah. For me, it feels very like very strong in like almost pillar-like, um, and um, really self-aware and knowing like what she wants, and having a certain shameless quality to it as well.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think those are the most important, like really knowing like, hey, this is what I want, and I'm actually really excited about that thing that I want. Doesn't
Mm.
mean you have to want it as well, but I'm really excited about this,
Yeah,
without any apologies for it. Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. And do you feel that you stepping deeper into your whore also helped you in becoming more clear in what you want in life?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
um like even just the work as an escort itself has taught me so much about what I actually want in life, and about what my boundaries are and how I can communicate about them. And that's mm, I was going to say that's even without working with that archetype, but that's not true because it's always been there. um but yeah, I mean, like this work as just like the job that I do, as well as to work with the archetype, has certainly um yeah, given me a lot of skills in identifying what I want, and also identifying ways to get what I want.
Mm,
um yeah. Hmm.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel curious, like, because we're also going into the like the balance or the merging even of the mother and the whore
Yeah.
qualities. And what I've been noticing when I speak to women who work in the realms of initiation through their sexual energy, um, I noticed there is also a lot of mother energy in that
Yeah.
present. Even when I heard you share like your session after session, people were crying in your arms, and so there is a strong mother quality that I
Yeah.
feel in the archetype of in the work as a sex worker, but also in the archetype as the whore, where they come together with the mother.
Yeah.
And I feel curious if you want to share something about that, how you experience
Yeah, like
mother in your work.
the mother archetype is has been a lot more easy for me to step into. It's like a second skin. Like it's, yeah. um and that carrying quality, and that holding quality, that is such a big part of my work. Like one of the sessions that I offer is massage and cuddles, which is exactly what you think it is. And like, so the last bit of the session is me holding the client, like physically,
Mm,
um, and that often has a very motherly quality to it, like stroking their face, having their head against my chest, like really having that sort of blanket of meanness around them. Um, so that's, yeah, it's like, so is that then the mother archetype, or is it the whore archetype? I don't know. It's both at the same time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful. Do you also have an example of a meeting that you've been having with your clients where the whore is much more present, in the sense of, if we just look at it in the classical way where we said you experience the whore in her chaos, in her me, what she wants, like a pillar, and the mother more in her nurturing quality,
Yeah.
more holding and the care. Is there also an example that you have where your whore would like be more present than the mother in a session?
Um, yeah, that's more often more present in the more classical escort work. Um, although even there they sort of merge, because it's just in me. So, um, but it has happened sometimes that that it's just like that hotness coming out, and it's just really um, really very like horny energy. Um, yeah, yeah, that happens as well, and that's really lovely.
Yeah,
Or that has been really lovely. It's not so much what I work with anymore, because now I'm much more focused on personal growth and having people go on personal journeys, where they can um, look at their issues and grow as sexually aware human beings.
yeah,
Um, so there, that energy is a little bit less important. Like it's also there, obviously, it's in the mix, but it's lower percentage.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I also feel that both these archetypes, even though we cannot fully separate them, they're like merged together.
Yeah.
I feel they also hold their own unique initiation energy.
Mm,
So I feel curious to what you feel the initiation is with your clients from the mother archetype, and what initiations you feel more coming from the whore archetype.
yeah.
Like, what does it open or start up or have
Yeah.
people remember?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Before I go into that, I want to add something to the last question still, because I think what is really like significant about the whole archetype for me in sex work, um, is that, like, in my personal life I can have like a preference for a certain type of people, or a certain person, and another person maybe not. But when I'm working, like, those preferences are just gone. It's not important anymore, and I can just um, do whatever is called for in the session with whoever is there. um, and I think that is very much the whole archetype coming through, like the whatever a person looks like or is like, as long as they are um, like respectful, that's basically the only um, thing I need to connect and to actually also feel um, like sexually aroused. I can, in my work, I can get aroused by people that um, in my personal life I probably wouldn't have a sexual connection with. So that's yeah, that's that.
So there's a deep being of service, huh? In the
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
archetype in your work, deep quality of being of service.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's very devotional. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, and then about the initiation quality of it is, it's a good question, because I've never actually tried to separate them, because in each meeting they're both there.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel that. Yeah.
yeah, but I guess the mother is more the one um, who makes them feel safe, and who like tells their inner child that it is okay, and that they're good the way they are. So it's really about self-acceptance, I guess. Um, and then the whole is more about inviting them to own their desires and own their pleasure, and step into that um, in a in a consensual way, and taking risks, um, in the sense of like showing themselves, and like it's so vulnerable for a lot of people to say, hey, this is my desire, because maybe someone will say no, and that can be devastating. So the horror is about inviting you, yeah, I know it's really scary, but do it anyway, because you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate for, as a good friend of mine once said. So it's, yeah, it's that like self-acceptance, and also like that courage in being vulnerable.
Beautiful. Yeah. Do you feel open to share some examples of what a session, like what a session can look like or feel like? Or I know I have this curiosity to like zoom in, if you feel curious for that.
Yeah, sure. It's a very open question though, so it's like,
Yeah.
do you have like a specific question, or like yeah.
Well, maybe like a specific curiosity would be a session where it goes more also in the secret and forbidden and the hidden, or like fantasy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I feel curious to that.
Yeah. Like I get quite a lot of clients who have had and have hidden their sexual desires for many, many, many years. And that in a session find like a safe space to, well, first of all, just share about it, because that's often the first time. And then sometimes when they feel ready to also go into it. So an example of that is someone I met years ago who was in his 60s, who had had a fantasy for, well, as long as he could remember. Like it was like the first fantasy that he would masturbate to, basically, about like being like a teacher or something, like a teacher type thing in a school setting, where he would punish a student in front of other students. And so it took quite a while to even get to the point of him sharing that. So the session was like, I don't know, 4 hours, 5 hours, something like that. And the first hour was just having a drink and talking about like, oh, and where have you traveled? Oh, I've traveled there as well. Oh, yeah, it's so beautiful. And just, you know, getting to know each other in that way, and for him to get rid of his nerves. And then at some point, he was like, yeah, there's this thing that I maybe want to share. It's like, okay, yeah, go for it if you want to. And then like with bits and pieces, that fantasy came out. And it was a really emotional experience for him to even be able to talk about it and not be ridiculed, which he was so afraid of. And he had this whole story in his head that he was a pervert and very weird and strange, and that it was very wrong for him to fantasize about this. And so what in a case like that, what I offer is just a space of non-judgment, and to just listen, and not judge any of those fantasies. So when he was sort of done with sharing, and his emotions were a little bit released, I asked him, like, is this something you wanna play with, like, for real? Is that, sounds like fun to me, so maybe we can create something. And we did, and that was just, it was wonderful to go into that, and to yeah, it's just such an honor to be allowed to play that role for someone. Um, and like he was really quite nervous, but what really helped was setting a very clear structure to it, and having very clear um, um, afspraken, um,
Agreement.
agreements
Yeah.
about like what is okay and what is not okay, and if we need to again, if we need to step out for a second to discuss something, how do we do that? So we worked with stop words, safe words, um, and so we created a very safe container in which we could go into that fantasy, and
Yeah.
have like different tools to make sure that we both still enjoyed it a lot, and not just blindly go in there.
Yeah.
And that really helped for him as well. Like it was very educational as well for him. Like, okay, so how do you actually negotiate or discuss stuff during sex, um, even if it's not like a full-on fantasy? Um, how it, whoa, there's ways to do this. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can even feel as you share that it gives almost relief in my body that
Mm,
someone suddenly has space in the being where normally it's like judged or suppressed or
yeah.
gives a lot more space to breathe, even listening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like often those fantasies that have been suppressed feel like really big and powerful. And then the moment you actually give it space, it's not not that big.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just sort of um, taking that space in a really gentle way. Um, and
Amazing.
that's often a big surprise for people. Like, oh, I thought this was going to be, and on some level it is, but it's also it's not going to overwhelm you. You're still in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So what would you say for anyone who's now listening that feels like, oh my God, I want to go on this exploration with my whore, or someone says I have a fantasy that I've been holding back, or there is energies from this archetype also that want to move forward, that want to come out more. What would you say to them?
um, it really depends on their specific situation, obviously, um, but in general, just allow yourself space for it. um, Set just, and what I mean by that is just set apart some time that you allow yourself to explore this
Mm,
in, and that can be um, like maybe at home, and you set the alarm for half an hour or an hour or whatever is feels feasible for you, to maybe self-touch and breathe into that archetype and see what comes up. It can be working with someone who's already gone through this initiation. It can be like if you are in good communication with a sexual partner, you can bring it up like, hey, there's this thing that I would really like to explore, and you can make a little plan together. Um, so there's different ways in which you can do that, and it really depends on your situation what is appropriate.
yeah,
Um, but certainly, like breath and time and movement are good starting points. Yeah. And also, like if you've already felt that energy that you want to explore, it might be good to, like when you sort of feel it in your daily life, to just notice like, okay, what has brought this on, like a certain type of music, or a situation that you find yourself in, or I don't know, maybe the sun on your skin, or whatever, and just put a bookmark on that so that you can use it later if you want to bring it up.
beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Good.
beautiful. Yeah. There's so much richness already in what you shared. Um,
Hmm.
mm,
And I think maybe a good thing to say is that, at least in my experience and my view, like the archetype of the whole, or the mother, or any archetype, is really something that can move through people of any gender. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to be a woman to go into the whole man and non-binary people and any other genders. We can all do it. It's accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I love that you bring that in. Yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you for bringing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I didn't ask about that you feel you want to share?
Whew. Good question.
Mm.
No, there's nothing in particular that feels incomplete. Like there's
Mm.
lots of topics that we could go into, but yeah, it feels quite complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I feel I want to thank you so much because I feel through your transmission and transmissions, just who you are, I feel the whore in me relaxes. I feel a
Mm.
permission for her to come out more, and I feel a deeper trust
Mm.
in her also. Yeah.
Oh, thank
I
you.
want to thank you for that. And I feel that our conversation can give that same permission to whoever is listening, whether it's man,
Mm.
woman, or queer, or whatever kind of gender or being. I feel there is a permission in this conversation that felt
Mm.
really beautiful.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Mm.
I also want to share for the ones who are listening, if this sparked curiosity to get to know the mother and the whore inside of you more, there will be a free activation on the 13th of September, the mother and the whore activation, where Sia, my dear friend, and I will go into a deeper teaching around the two archetypes. And then also the 27th of September, we will offer the Mother and the Wh0r the initiation, where we go in a more embodied experience to experience and welcome these two archetypes in our
Mm.
body.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you feel like you want to go deeper after that, drop me a line as well. So.
Yeah, because that was my next question also. Like, if people feel curious about you and your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, so on my website, I think you're probably going to put notes with the video, but it's rosieheart.com. And also if you search for Rosie Enorah Heart on like Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you will find me. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so
Mm.
much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a really, really lovely conversation.
Mm.